Say, why are you so selfish? And I'm like, you don't know me. Why you call me selfish? He said, look, you got so much to offer the world. Why do you want to do this? And I had already done that, right? I wrote the first book, and when I wrote the first book, I started talking all over the country. I was doing some of the largest events in America in '98. And then I saw things. I started doing a lot of religious events to religious organizations, and I saw things that I didn't see in my world. And it really just jaded me.
What do you mean?
Well, I saw people be not what they were supposed to be. I saw a big televangelist one day in a studio where I was hosting a program. Someone asked him for water. He asked for water, and the guy brings him a glass, and he just slapped it off his hands. Says, you know better than to give me water in a glass. I take Perrier. And I'm like, man, I would have kicked your ass so bad. and just different things, different things that it just, and the division among them, and the hatred. And it's like, look, I don't care if people are Baptists, if people, like I tell right now, look, my mission, I don't care if you're Baptist, Muslim, if you worship dogs, if you worship cats, I don't care if you're gay, straight, quadruple, whatever you want to be. I'm not going to tell you what to be. That's up to you. All I want to share with you is how the love of a Jewish carpenter changed my life. And if the shoe fits, wear it, man. If not, buy another pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Well,
that's fascinating.
And to impact people's lives, to impact kids' lives, so that hopefully they don't go through what Jorge Valdes went through, and to send books to prisoners so they can find why is the world in despair that we're at? Because there's no hope, man.
Yeah, you've clearly experienced a lot in your life, and I think it's very good that you're sharing it. I kind of want to skip back real quick to the beginning. We just told the last half of it, sort of, after you got out. But I found it really interesting in your story how you talk about at the moment you got on the plane from Cuba to go to Miami, you were in an emotional coma because you were so young, you didn't know what was going on, you were feeling pain for the first time in your life, and you sort of didn't know what to do. You didn't know whether you should cry, whether you should be confident. You didn't know what to do. You just kind of went to the plane and emotionless.
And I tell people there was 3 cataclysmic events in my life. That was number 1. First of all, my parents were very wealthy, so we got everything. So communism did not affect us at all. What I felt as a 10-year-old kid, I had a bicycle, I had all the toys I wanted. We had television in our house. We had a chauffeur. We went to the beach after school. So life was good for me. So all of a sudden, I'm waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and my mother says, get dressed. And I'm like, where are we going? She says, to Miami. So I went to pack a little suitcase of toys. And she said, no, just the clothes on your back. And I was very confused. I had no idea what was going on. And my mother was very religious. It was a period when we would go to school and Fidel would teach us about communism, right? You're a 10-year-old kid. You're impressionable about everything, right? But we would come home and my mother said, that's all bullshit. God, 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 God. That was everything for her.
Right.
So her whole thing is my kids are not going to grow up in a communist country that they cannot worship God freely.
So explain to someone who doesn't understand the history of communism and Cuba and Fidel Castro's regime, explain why they were so against religion and Christianity and all that.
If you read some of Fidel's books, which I was able to read when I went to Cuba, and it was really interesting because, he was raised by priests, right? Fidel went to the best Jesuit schools in Cuba. Communists believe, well, let's go back. If you read the writings of Karl Marx and Max Engel, right? The Communist Manifesto, it's a perfect world, right? Everybody's the same. Everybody makes the same. Nobody abuses anybody. There's no class distinction, right? And so Fidel comes along, and I tell people, I didn't think that Fidel was, in reality, wanted to be a communist, because I think Fidel came to the United States looking for help, and they didn't. They turned his back. So there was 2 superpowers. He was smart enough to realize that, hey, I go with one or the other, or I'm going to be wiped out. But the thing about it is that in the communist ideology, they teach you that man is the center, that there is no God, right? That God and religion is an opiate. It's a drug used by institutions to control people. So the first thing that they do in school when we're little was start teaching us through a program called the Pioneers, like the Boy Scouts, and they would teach you all this, right? And Fidel, the supreme leader, is the best, and all of that stuff. I mean, to me, it was all good. You're 10 years old. What do you know, right?
Exactly.
But I come home, and my mother, like, as a matter of fact, if it was up to my dad, he would have never said nothing, because my dad was very rich. Life was good for him, and he wasn't going to rock any boats. But not my mom. And my mom was 5 feet. I tell my mom was 5'5", Osama bin Laden would have had nothing on her, because she was a terrorist. And she's like, no, and I'm taking my kids out of here. And we're going to Miami. Now, think about that. Think about her conviction to abandon a life of wealth, to come to the United States with nothing, 40 years of age, 3 little kids, 10, 9, and 5.
Yeah.
But at the airport, what happens is, so as I'm going to the airport with them, I'm in sort of a daze, right? In a daze because confused. What's going on? Why? Maybe we're just going for a weekend. You know, I have no idea about anything. Maybe we don't need to pack anything because we're just going to go and come back. Because then, you know, they didn't tell me much. All they said is just pack. We're going to Miami. And so we're waiting to board the airplane. And I see we're the last people, Valdez, of course. So I see my mom crying, and my dad is, I'm not going. And I was like, so my mom comes up to me and grabs my hand and grabs my brother and sister and says, George, you go to Miami. I'll see you one day. They made a mistake, and they said she couldn't come. And my dad, of course, didn't want to come all along anyway. So he's like, you ain't going? I ain't going.
Right.
So I'm like, and that's when I become in a daze. That's when I become comatose. I'm walking to the airplane, and my world changed. I went from being a 10-year-old kid playing with kites on the street, baseball, which was my life, to becoming a man all of a sudden, to becoming a father and a mother to my brother and sister. And we come to Miami, and my dad got in the plane as we're finally leaving. And we come to Miami, and what do? 11 of us go live in a one-bedroom apartment with one bathroom, writing down what time we're going to piss, because everyone had to go to school or work, right? So here we go from a house that was 1 square block to a little 800 square foot apartment in Little Havana, you know, with 11 of us all together.
Wow.
And so my father, you know, went to work as a janitor for J. Byron's, which is like a J.C. Penney's, and making minimum wage, 85 cents an hour, and never complained. And I was mad, because a month later we moved into a house, because one of the things that Cubans did that was really great was you come to Miami and you go live in somebody's house for free for a month or 2 months, so you can save enough money to rent your own apartment. Right. And then you do the same for somebody else. Right?
Right.
And that's how we helped each other, you know? That's how we were overcome. We were able to overcome, you know, 10-year-old getting off the airplane and seeing signs that said, no animals, no Cubans. This ain't Havana. Go back to Cuba. Speak English. I'm 10 years old. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I didn't see no distinction. I didn't realize that people hated people.
Yeah.
So anyway, we go and then we started to go hungry. All we would have for breakfast was 1 glass of this powdered milk from Vietnam that would not mix with 2 raw eggs, and that's all we had till nighttime. And nighttime we had rice and beans. And I remember finding out a friend of mine was having lunch, and he had just come from Cuba a year earlier than us. And I come to find out, and I'm like, well, how is it that you can afford lunch? And he's like, oh, we get food stamps. I said, really? What the hell is that? He said, oh, it's the little thing the government gives you, and with that we go to the grocery store and we can buy food. Man, I thought I discovered the universe. I go back to my dad. I said, hey, Dad, remember I've been telling you that my friend, he has lunch. And he's like, you know, he was that type of man that didn't speak much. And I said, he told me that he gets food stamps. I said, Dad, do you know about food stamps? He says, yeah, I do. I said, well, why don't we get food stamps? He says, son, that's for poor people. I'm like, holy shit. We haven't gotten to poor yet, man. We got to dig our way out of whatever state this is, climb up to poor. And I said, Dad, are we not poor? He said, no, son, we just don't have any money. And then I'll never forget that. He took his 2 fingers, put them in my chest, and he says, you get up early and help feed your family. I was 10. I weighed 70 pounds. I was like a skinny rail. And I'm like, been getting up since 4:30 in the morning, and I'm 64 now for the last 54 years. But we did. and we struggle and we survive, you know. And this is the thing that as a lot of times as I speak, I talk about, like how we see in the world here, what's happening here in America, you know, with the government giving you now all this extra money. Now there's people that need help, yeah, without a doubt. But I'm going to tell you something.
Stimulus checks and
stuff.
Yeah,
with the stimulus check, now people don't want to go back to work because they get more with a $600 and the unemployment than they did before. And what they don't realize is that the government is creating the new slavery of America, the new slaves. Why are we the slaves? Because what does the slave is? You just sit back and wait till the master tells you something, because you're not going to be creative, you're not going to be entrepreneur, you're going to lose your work habits. You're going to lose your desire to succeed, your drive, everything. You're just going to sit back and wait till the master sends you a check. And then what happens? One day the master don't send a check.